This diagram shows the architecture of application running in a cloud-native environment. Applications can be containerized on their own, or they could also be a collection of components deployed as a microservices architecture application. These applications run on top of a layer of certified middleware and runtimes. For quite some time, IBM has been optimizing its legacy middleware and other services around the container native environment. And we have today available the Cloud Paks. The Cloud Paks will take technologies organized by capability and deliver them for you to use in an optimized way as container-based resources on top of an infrastructure-independent common operating environment. We get something that's infrastructure-independent by running this stack of cloud-native applications plus middleware on top of Red Hat OpenShift. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to be able to deploy your applications on-premise in your own environment on a cloud, on IBM Cloud, and also in other public cloud infrastructure based on what your business needs are and which cloud provider you want to use. So when you want to move an application to this cloud native model, it's very tempting as a developer just to dive in and start working at it. But we'd recommend for you to take a moment and spend some time doing some planning, because that's the key to success, especially when you consider the large number of applications that are typically an enterprise application estate. So how do you do this planning? The key to the planning is assessing each application based upon a couple of dimensions. Take a look at the business value. In other words, the kind of benefits you'll achieve from an operational perspective by moving to a cloud-native architecture. And pick out those applications that are going to yield higher value than others. So where do you find high value in terms of moving an application to a cloud-native model? First of all, if it's an application that's changing a lot, it's undergoing multiple upgrades per year, that's an application which is going to have much more benefit when you go to a cloud-native model. The agility provided by that will allow you to be able to update the application in a more easy way and also be able to do it with less downtime. Speaking of downtime, if you have applications that have a lot of complex interdependencies, which may cause quite a while to be able to deploy them, those are also candidates for looking at another approach towards taking them to a cloud-native model to get more agility in upgrading the applications. Another thing to keep in mind from a business value perspective is the user base. Is there a large user base of the application, or is the user base growing? In other words, it's important to make sure that you're focusing your efforts on applications which are strategic to the migration path. That isn't to say that you might want to pick out an application which is perhaps partitioned into one line of business so that when you're first going through these efforts, you're trying to upgrade something which you can see how it all works and build your initial experience. But you certainly don't want to pick an application which is on its way out. That would be effort spent that would not be return back on the investment. The other thing to think about is the actual technical effort that's involved in moving the application to a cloud-native model. As you heard about before, applications use many different kinds of APIs in enterprises. And if you have an application which is using an API which isn't compatible with cloud-native runtimes, that's going to be more technical effort than applications which are closer to the architectures for cloud-native. This is where the tool, the Transformation Advisor tool from the IBM Cloud Pak for Applications can help. It can help you identify the actual effort involved in moving an application to a cloud-native model. So, of course, it's pretty obvious. The best candidates to consider moving are the ones which combine both a high business value and a low technical effort. So what are some approaches to migrate? So we'll talk about three here. There's several more to consider, but these are sort of the three top ones that you'll hear. And sometimes there's different terms that are out there that you'll see, but we'll focus on three, and I'll define what each one of these means so that it makes some sense. So the first one is replatform. Replatform you might also hear described as lift and shift. And what a replatform is to take an existing application source and binary and to just package it with a container runtime. So there's not being any updates specific to architecture or componentization. We're just taking the existing code and putting it into a container. So this results in the application being sort of lifted and shifted from the current environment, whether it's running on a server today or running on a VM, to being able to run inside a container on top of a container orchestration platform. And we'll show you an example of that in a little bit. The next approach to migrate is to take a look at the logical boundaries within an application and use those logical boundaries as a basis for repackaging into macro services as opposed to microservices. So an example would be if you had an existing application that was a large EAR file with multiple WAR files, you could take each one of those WAR files individually and put them into their own container and then deploy that as a collection of containers for the application in the cloud environment. And the last migration approach is the approach of refactoring. Refactoring to microservices is to go through and take the existing monolithic application and go through and analyze from an operational perspective the different domains and roles within the application and create microservices for each one of those roles. We'll talk about a technique to do that a little later on in this course. Next up, let's take a look at a demonstration of migrating an existing application with the help of Transformation Advisor.